Are there a series of blood tests you can take ahead of time that will determine if you're going to have the most severe reaction to COVID? Yes, there are 5 blood tests you can take to know what your likelihood of ending up in the ICU are. It's 2021. We should be optimistic. We have a vaccination that's working. It's going around the world, but it's going to take a couple years for everybody to be vaccinated. We'll have to have some form of a booster, and it's not 100%. So there is still some risk in getting COVID. Now, according to the International Journal of Infectious Diseases, over a couple-month period of time, thousands of people were given 200 blood tests when they entered the hospital. And they work backwards through the symptoms to determine what those 5 blood tests are. And look at some of the symptoms. Talk about a clinical medical journal. One of the symptoms was non-survivor. If you look here, D-dimer's one of the big ones. You look here, here's interleukin 6. All right, I'll list these 5 blood tests in the comments. Other reputable publications picked up versions of this in each of these blood tests individually. Now, working with my general practitioner and paying for a couple of these tests myself, I got all 5 of these tests. And we'll see that on 4 of the 5, I did really well. But one of the 2 considerations I'll talk about in a moment is nobody asked the question of what happens if you end up too low on a spectrum. And I did. Here are 2 important considerations of these tests. The first is everybody that had these tests already had COVID. So is getting these tests ahead of time valid? And I would say that's an important consideration. If you get these tests and it turns out you perform poorly, I think it's a reasonable assumption that that's not going to improve if you get COVID. So there's still some validity in doing these ahead of time. The second one is they said what the spectrum was that you needed to score low on these tests, but what happened, like in my case, when you score too low? My final thought on blood tests is this. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not trying to play one. I think that not only is it responsible, but we should have the freedom to be curious about things we have control over. And one of them is this emerging blood test online that we could sign up for. In my case, I took 5 optional tests to determine what my susceptibility for dangerous COVID was. And I found out that I had a blood test that was low. So now I'm working with my doctor. We've tested my iron. It's low. And he is working with me medically to solve that problem. And although the scope of that is different than these tests, the result was the curiosity of looking at my blood determined something that I needed to be working on. I love everything related to proactive health, anything related to biomarkers, anything related to blood tests in particular. I will say this, if your blood testing budget is low, if there is such a thing, there is for me, there are 2 tests that are the most potential to show if you're going to have a severe reaction. That's the LDH and the D-dimer. You can only afford those 2, get those 2. All 5 of these tests will be in my comments. If you have any thoughts related to any of this, blood tests that should be considered, or questions around it, I love to talk anything related to proactive health. Thank you.